Well, this is the pot of Agapanthus. You may have watched us pot up last year. It's coming on quite nicely now, and the young plants you can see here growing away with their fresh growth very nicely. They've been planted in this planter with snowdrops, which have flowered really beautifully for us this spring. But now's the time just to start putting a bit of feed onto this, getting some of this weed seed out that's coming on here. We've got a bit of soft milk thistle, and there's some buttercup that's coming up in the compost, so I'm just going to pick this over. But the other thing we're going to do with this now is move it into a more sunny position, because it's been sheltering here in this little part of the courtyard where it just gets the morning sun but then goes quite shady for the rest of the day. And what these Agapanthus now really need is to start getting baked. Now the difference between that pot we've just looked at and this planter, which contains a much larger leafed Agapanthus, and you can see what winter damage has occurred on this. There's a lot of dieback, a lot of soft, almost rotten growth on the top of this, and now's the time really to start clearing this away and let the new shoots that will start emerging from the base here grow away without being impeded by any of this. Now it's important not to pull this too hard. You don't want to rip it down onto the base or crown of these bulbs that are just underneath the surface here. So some of this I'm going to cut away, others, if it's well rotten, we'll just pull away. And again, same treatment for this, out into the sun. Once I've tidied it up, we'll then give it a good feed and get it somewhere nice and warm and sunny so it can grow away, and this should be flowering for us by midsummer. This is another little planter that's overwintered, but oh dear, this one has really gone completely. I'm going to have to repot this, and it's going to be quite compacted in there. We'll make a decision when we start splitting these crowns to see just how many we've got and whether we can replant them all into a single container, or whether it's an opportunity to actually split these and get 2 or 3 new planted containers of this quite small leaved blue Agapanthus. Here's another example of a slightly older plant here, which has grown as a single crown and be potted up into this container a couple of years ago. Again, good time now to actually just start picking over this and remove some of these dying leaves. All the time being a little careful, particularly with these old flower stalks. If you start pulling these, you're likely to break off the new growth where it's occurring at the base. So better to actually snip these off with a blunt pair of scissors or secateurs and allow this fresh growth to come up unimpeded. And again, water and feed, get them somewhere sunny. This is another rescued Agapanthus that we found in a reclamation yard last summer. Actually paid for the pot. The plant came as a consequential freebie. This is really crowded into this pot now. You can see the growth coming away. It's obviously been planted with some other little shrub thing in here, which I'm not certain what it is. But again, this really would benefit from being picked over and a really good feed at this time of year. And again, a big crown like this really gives you the opportunity, if you wish to multiply your Agapanthus up, to pare some of these apart and replant them into some fresh compost altogether. But with some of these pots, it's a real job trying to get them out. A lot of these pots, you can see they're slightly bulbous in the middle, and the roots of Agapanthus, if I just show you on this one, tend to form a real thick mat. If I just scrape a little bit of the compost off there, you can see some of these really superficial and close to the surface, but they form an absolute thick root ball really just under the surface, which can be incredibly difficult to tear apart and quite often will end up having to be cut. I've got another broken pot here. We've had bad frosts here in Norfolk over the spring, and it's really been very cold still at night, but these have obviously succumbed to real penetrating frosts, and there's no sign of the little Agapanthus that was planted in there. This is a really dark purpley blue one, which we picked up at the Sandringham Flower Show a couple of years ago as a tiny little seedling almost. Flowered last year, but I think just looking at that, when I repot this, whether I'm going to find any life in there or not this year, I hope so, and if I do, I've got a new pot slightly size up that I'm ready to plant back into. But if this is still as small as it was last year, I will probably try and find something similar size to what it was being planted in, because it did grow very well in there last year. So a lot of tidying to do on these Agapanthus, and then get them into a nice sunny position and grow them away for summer.